It is 9:01, so we're going to go ahead and get started. The meeting is being recorded. Thank you for joining us this morning for the quarterly Michigan Alliance for Greater Mobility Advancement, MAGMA, Advisory Council meeting. I am Amanda Bowerschmidt, Project Manager at the Workforce Intelligence Network and convener for the MAGMA Governing Board, which is comprised of automotive OEMs, manufacturing Tier 1 suppliers, and industry stakeholder groups. MAGMA is leading the recently awarded State of Michigan Sector Strategies EV Jobs. The topic of today's discussion is the Michigan Defense Resiliency Consortium, MDRC, and Defense Manufacturing Community Support Program, DMCSP. We will learn about the MDRC collaborative group of organizations dedicated to establishing the groundwork of energy storage and battery manufacturing critical for the Department of Defense's rapid transition to electrified vehicles and renewable energy sources. On behalf of the MAGMA Governing Board, I would like to thank and welcome our panel of speakers and moderator. Our esteemed moderator is Sarah Tenen, the Senior Sector Development Director and Cyber Advisor at the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Serving as the state's program expert and advisor to the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, MEDC, Sarah collaborates with other government agencies, academia, and industry on raising awareness and promoting the growth of cyber ecosystem within the state of Michigan. Sarah's focus is on cultivating cybersecurity talent through statewide education, with an emphasis on the emergency embedded system security space while promoting a collaborative statewide approach to cybersecurity. Sarah also heads up the MEDC's broadband efforts with a focus on access, affordability, and adoption, and a commitment to enabling equitable economic opportunities for all Michiganders. Previous to joining the MEDC, Sarah was the DoD OEA Grant Coordinator for the Macomb St. Clair Workforce Development Board, where she oversaw a $6.7 million Southeast Michigan Defense Industry Adjustment Grant, supporting 15 projects intended to identify and diversify Michigan's defense portfolio, expand educational and workforce training for emerging markets, including the Cyber Range Hub expansion in Michigan, and provide opportunities for Michigan companies engaged in the defense economy. Additionally, Sarah also serves on several nonprofit boards and advisory committees and currently serves as an advisor to the board of directors for the Women in Defense Michigan chapter. A Michigan transplant, Sarah is a proud graduate of the University of Windsor holding a Bachelor's of Arts degree. Sarah, I will hand it off to you to please welcome our first speaker.
Thank you, Amanda. That's a lot. So there's going to be a lot of acronyms in today's webinar. It's whenever you're in defense, you're always looking at acronyms. So we're going to have lots of letters. It's going to be alphabet soup today for sure. Before I introduce our speakers, just wanted to do a quick overview of why Michigan for defense. Michigan is home to the nation's largest ground vehicle defense companies in the U.S. Such as General Dynamics, BAE, GE Aviation, and GM Defense, and more. We're #1 for military defense production in the U.S. We have 5 major installations. Michigan has nearly 4,000 businesses that are currently serving as the defense industry in aerospace. And we have over 116,000 Michigan jobs. So the reason that this is such an important thing for Michigan is because of all of the defense industry here. So I'm very excited to have our speakers today talk about this incredible initiative. And we always talk about collaboration, and this program is Collaboration in Action in Michigan. So I am going to introduce our first speaker, Stephanie Ludwig. Stephanie is the Director of Industry Programs, working at EGI's Business and Industry Programs. An experienced program manager, Stephanie leads several initiatives that supports companies across multiple industries in stabilizing, growing, and diversifying their businesses. In her work at EGI, she helps connect and leverage resources, funding, and technology to help local companies succeed. Prior to joining the Economic Growth Institute, Stephanie managed a global business team that provided a variety of product and system certification programs in the public health and safety sector. She worked with thousands of clients and suppliers across the globe to assist in providing risk management solutions with a mission to protect and improve public health through testing, inspection, and certification. Outside of work, Stephanie spends her time with her family and friends. She enjoys reading, hiking, and traveling, and holds a Bachelor of Science from Michigan State University. So a Sparty at U of M. It's always fun to see that. So I'm going to throw it over to Stephanie for her first presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. We can move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so to start, I would like to give a little background on where the Defense Manufacturing Community Support Program, or DMCSP, came from and what its purpose is. And as Sarah said, we do have an alphabet soup of acronyms, so I will try to actually use all of the words along with them so that we can keep clear on where we are. But DMCSP is authorized through the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation, or OLDCC, which was formerly known as the Office of Economic Adjustment, which is a United States Department of Defense organization and provides technical and financial assistance to states, territories, and communities that are invested in the defense mission. The purpose of OLDCC assistance is to support the readiness and resiliency of both defense installations and defense communities. So OLDCC has been around since 1960, and they run a variety of programs. Next slide. So this slide is just a list of all of the different programs that OLDCC supports. I'm not going to be talking about each of these programs, but I am going to be sharing information on the Defense Manufacturing Community Support Program and the initiatives of our consortium. Next slide. So the Defense Manufacturing Community Support Program is designed to support long-term community investments that strengthen national security innovation and expand the capabilities of the defense manufacturing industrial ecosystem. This program is authorized under Section 846 of fiscal year 2019 in the National Defense Authorization Act, which enabled the Secretary of Defense to establish a program to designate and support consortiums as a defense manufacturing community in order to strengthen the national security industrial base. So to receive funding, there's a two-part process. The first step is to apply to become a defense manufacturing community designation, or defense manufacturing community. And starting in 2020 and annually thereafter, OLDCC has released a NOFO, or a notification of funding opportunity, that is related to the priorities of the DoD for that year. From there, consortiums are invited to submit a proposal that addresses the needs of that NOFO for consideration. If your proposal is accepted, your consortium then receives a defense community designation that is good for 5 years, and that makes you eligible to apply for step 2, which is funding based on eligible activities. Next slide. So here's a list of the activities that the DoD deems eligible, and these would have most likely have been included in part of as part of your initial proposal in order for you to be able to receive that defense community designation. Next slide. So since 2020, OLDCC has averaged about 6 designations a year. And this map shows the 2020 to 2022 designations. And then to the right, I've added in the 6 designations of which MDRC was selected based on our proposal related to supporting energy storage and battery manufacturing in the state of Michigan. So as you can see, there are defense manufacturing communities all across the state. Some states have more than one, and they all have different focuses based on whatever the NOFO that was released for that field year in order to support the defense's priorities of that year. Next slide. So what is a consortium? A consortium can be comprised of a variety of various combinations of academia, the defense industry and association-led organizations, nonprofit organizations, state and local government organizations. The key is that the consortium must demonstrate regional collaboration capabilities and technological and/or the organization must be technological or industrial-based supply chains that are determined to be critical to national security. The lead organization must be an established entity with recognized authority to bring that consortium together and move the proposed work forward. Next slide. So for MDRC, EGI, or the Economic Growth Institute at the University of Michigan, met these requirements and is the lead organization of our consortium. And through our existing partnerships, we worked to create the Michigan Defense Resiliency Consortium. So who is EGI? We are an outward-facing organization at the University of Michigan that has been here for nearly 40 years. The core of what we do every day is to work towards equitable economic growth, where we leverage the University of Michigan's resources, research, technologies, and expertise to foster innovation to create positive economic impacts in the communities and companies that are within those communities that we serve. We primarily work in the state of Michigan, but are not limited to those state boundaries. Next slide. So this slide shows the members of our consortium, and you will be hearing from several of them here shortly about their components of work and what they are doing to support this mission of energy storage and battery manufacturing, of moving that forward across the great state of Michigan. Next slide. So let's talk about what we are doing here with our initiative. So MDRC is an active network focused on laying the groundwork for energy storage and battery manufacturing to support the DoD's transition from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles and beyond. Our vision is for Michigan to lead the nation in technology, talent, and manufacturing transformation, facilitating the DoD's shift to electric power with both public and private sector collaboration. The initiative that MDRC is working on is working to achieve directly correlates with what the automotive electrification initiatives are happening that are also happening across the state. Next slide, please. Okay, as I just talked about, our goal is to create the critical foundation for energy storage and battery manufacturing for the DoD. The timeline for this grant started back in September of 2023 and goes through August of 2026. EGI is the lead organization with 4 subrecipient and 3 matched providers. And this initiative brought $4.9 million of funding, as well as $1.3 million of match funding to move this forward across our state. Next slide, please. So this initiative has 4 pillars. The first pillar is leveraging Michigan's assets. We have a technology acceleration, which you're going to hear more from, that is being led by Centropolis here shortly. We have company assistance, where we are offering technical assistance directly to companies moving into the supply chain, and a workforce development component, which you're also going to hear about later in this presentation. Next slide. So leveraging Michigan assets. This is a component that EGI is leading. So in this component, we are collaborating with commercial sector partners and academic institutions to map public and private sector investments and ongoing R&D in Michigan. This collaboration aims to identify advanced battery and energy storage assets within the state of Michigan for current and future applications, which the DoD may leverage to address critical gaps in their energy storage and battery technology needs. So our team is actively engaged with the DoD to address their prioritized strategy and begin resolving the battery standardization and analytic and infrastructure gaps. We will be developing an interactive map that shows where we can identify resources in order to close those gaps across the state of Michigan. Next slide. So the company support pillar. So MDRC is offering technical assistance support to small and medium-sized companies in the energy and storage battery space who would like to enter the defense supply chain, or companies who are in this space who have already started their journey into the defense supply chain, but need assistance in meeting the DoD requirements. The DoD has very stringent requirements for companies that they're going to work with. Some of that is cybersecurity requirements that they need to have in place, as well as reliable production processes and ensuring that they are able to meet their needs in a timely manner. So this program helps to ensure that there's a sufficient cash flow in order to meet that upfront investment requirements in order to do work with the DoD. So with this program, we have cost share funds that are available for qualifying companies that they can receive up to $75,000 in federal grant funding to move them into this space. So to qualify, companies must be located in Michigan. They must have fewer than 500 employees, be financially stable, and demonstrate a critical potential to address a specific need in the defense and energy storage and battery supply chain. Super excited. This correlates directly with the automotive industry as well. Many of these companies work in both of those spaces. So we're optimistic that we can build resilient companies that can support both of these industries. Next slide. So here, my understanding is everybody will be receiving these slides at the end. So to learn more, we have a link to our website. You can also reach out to me directly. Happy to set up a separate call to talk about either of these initiatives or answer any questions about the consortium. And with that, that's all I have to share.
Stephanie, that was great. I know that I learned something too today. So this is a fantastic initiative, and we're happy to be supporting it here at the MEDC as well. Our next speaker is Chad Dar. Chad most recently served as the Chief Marketing Officer at Locke Performance in Plymouth, Michigan, where he was responsible for all company sales, product development, and the company's program management office. Chad started at Locke in 2009 to launch and lead the product development business line that has experienced a 45% growth rate over its first 6 years of business. In 2014, Chad led the business capture efforts to land $578 million production program to field upgraded suspension and track systems for all Bradley A3 fighting vehicles at Army Fort locations worldwide. In 2018, Chad led the business capture efforts for the Multiple Launch Rocket Systems Integrated Armor Cab, MLRS IAC program, valued at an additional $475 million. Both production programs were launched using sound programmatic practices exceeding all expectations for delivery and quality. Chad has an MBA, a Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering, and a Bachelor of Science in Materials Science and Engineering from the University of Michigan. Go Blue. Prior to joining Locke, Chad worked at BAE Systems out of Sterling Heights, Michigan from 2006 to 2009, where he served as a program integration manager for future combat systems and a program manager for modernization of the mobility systems for the Bradley fighting vehicle platform. While on FCS, Chad focused on integrating the mobility team towards successful demonstration events in Santa Clara, California. And that's okay, that was in California, for VIP demonstrations, and that included the Army Chief of Staff. Prior to his tenure at BAE Systems, Chad worked for American Systems Technology Incorporated for 2 years, a small development business where he led military development projects for embedded diagnostics and prognostic applications. Before entering the defense industry, Chad worked at Visteon Corporation from 1998 to 2004, where he served as the alternator bearing engineer for all Ford Motor Company alternators, led alternator key testing programs, and served as the project engineering lead for the Expedition, Navigator, Focus, F-Series, and Escape alternators in the support of Ford body and assembly plants and Ford power supply systems lead. So I'm going to let Chad take it from here. He is now with Centropolis Accelerator, and he's going to talk to us about the Defense Hard Tech Accelerator.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I'm Chad Dar, like Sarah kindly introduced, and thank Stephanie as well for taking the lead. Anyway, so I'm very excited to be here to communicate to you, Centropolis and what we're doing to start a hard tech defense accelerator. And I've had, like my bio alluded to, I had 9 years of automotive experience, and then followed by 20 years in defense. And this whole effort here reminds me of a conversation I had when I was at a R&D center, and there's a vice president at one of the big three companies I had a conversation with. It was a private conversation. He said he was adamant. I was like 20 years old, and this gentleman was adamant that we will never see passenger electric vehicles. And it just goes to show that, technology just keeps changing the world. When you think things aren't going to happen, you just never know. Hydrogen fuel cells have been out there for a long time. It doesn't mean they won't see the light of day. So anyways, it's interesting how things come kind of full circle. And now I'm here presenting at a group of folks that are focused on building up a supply chain and workforce for electric vehicles. So agenda, before I dive into the Hard Tech Accelerator, I'm going to briefly introduce what Centropolis is. It's not new, it's been around. And then I'll dive into the accelerator, go over the overview and mission and kind of the areas, the problem areas that we're looking to solve, and the objectives. Next slide, please. So Centropolis has been in existence as a smart zone in Southfield, Michigan, located at Lawrence Tech University, founded by Dan Radomski. I believe he's online, but anyways, so it's been highly successful, not focused on defense until now, really. But the whole premise of it is that it's the only hard tech accelerator in the state of Michigan focused on hardware technology. There's a lot of funding on software out there these days for good reasons, but at the end of the day, software has to it exists, resides in firmware, which is hardware, and which then controls a lot of hardware systems to make these vehicles run. So software only does so much good if the hardware is functioning properly. To date, in only 6 years, Centropolis is supported 320 companies and helped commercialize 209 products. You can see under over 400 contracts and over $142 million. Centropolis has numerous funding streams and programs in place, but nothing at this point focusing on defense up until our efforts that we're starting up here with MDRC. Just a few examples of things that Centropolis is focused on. One is in the area of industrial decarbonization, so reducing carbon footprint for manufacturing facilities. They have a C3 accelerator focused on clean tech, climate tech, and the circular economy. There's an Industry 4.0 effort. A lot of effort geared towards designing for Michigan manufacturing, producibility, and it's a lot of it is focused on mid to late stage technology development. To next slide. So at Centropolis they're in Southfield. Oh, just starting. Just a second. All right. So at Centropolis in Southfield, we have a facility there for with offices, but also engineering and prototyping capability. We could do we have engineers, we can leverage the Lawrence Tech, engineering school with engineers to help support companies. And, the whole thing is we could pick companies that apply, that have promising technologies to meet, and have a viable path towards getting some kind of production. And then we can help them out with up to $250,000 in engineering and business and not financial, but like expertise in terms of services and prototyping. We have a machine shop. We can do hardware in the loop testing. We got 3D printers and white light, scanners, so we could do reverse engineering. And then, companies can come in and work there, with other folks, and just a good space to collaborate and get things done. One thing I want to mention too is a key partner for the Centropolis Accelerator is Monroe and Associates. They do have a Monroe Defense arm, but Monroe is a key partner in terms of providing engineering resources and providing affordable engineering resources to help with startup companies. Next slide. So one thing that makes Centropolis stand out and why we can be of such value to companies with emerging technologies that are just trying to figure things out, right? There are like 40 experts in residence, and each expert in residence, these are under staff, by Centropolis. A lot of it's part-time. I'm an expert in resident, just as an example, and everyone has over 25 years experience. With a whole, across the board, not everybody has experience in every category, but we cover everything you would need to know, whether it's design or prototyping, material science, manufacturing, even legal and supply chain, intellectual property protection, which is huge, because if you don't get into defense and protect your own IP that you funded yourself, you could literally lose your IP to the government. And then certainly business strategy and helping make industry connections and helping sell. There's so much involved to grow into the defense space beyond just your R&D customer. And I'll get into that in a little bit. Next slide. Okay, now we're going to dive into the Defense Tech Accelerator. Excuse me. So, this is kickstarted with the support of MDRC, and I want to thank you very much for that. So, we just got going here. I was hired just back in January, so it's only been about 2 months since I've been on board here. We're starting to ramp things up, starting to get our message out. And anyway, so the way to launch this thing is we've signed what's called a CRADA, Cooperative Research and Development Agreement, with the Army R&D Center here in Warren, Michigan, which is called the Army Ground Vehicle Systems Center. And what that CRADA allows us to do, it's not an exchange of money. It's a unique kind of mechanism between industry and the government, where they open up information and resources to us. In exchange, we're going out and looking for companies that meet the needs of their technology gaps that they're looking to fulfill. And so our focus will be, meeting with members with the key technology areas I'll get into, and kind of understand what the problems are and challenges, and then we'll do the matchmaking. We can help existing companies that they're working with, for example, or help find other companies with different technologies that maybe they don't even know of. Another thing is, the government themselves, they have their own patents. The R&D Center is a vehicle-focused R&D center there in Warren. It used to be called TARDEC, and they have their own patents, and there's even a mechanism for companies to license the Army's technology and commercialize it for both defense and commercial. It doesn't have to be for defense purposes only. And I think it's, give me a second here. We've made some really good progress already. We've got the crate assigned. We've joined NAMC, which is a consortium of again, academic and private industry and government, where a lot of funding streams come through to really help companies get past early R&D to the finish line and get on a platform. The GVSC Center had an industry days in February where we were able to already meet with some folks, and then we actually had a follow-up meeting with the battery person, Larry Toomey, just earlier this week. And so we're already engaging and understanding their needs, and we understand there's a spec to basically provide a drop-in replacement for the same form and fit batteries that are already out there in a lead acid form. So we're making some good progress. We're targeting not just vehicles though. The primary focus is vehicles, but we're also looking at drones, and drones are, again, electrified platforms. And so there's a lot of technology overlap, when you talk about the technology that's needed to, basically provide the mobility aspects of drones versus vehicles. I know one's flying and one's driving, but at the end of the day, it's still power electronics and energy storage systems. Technologies could be products, but it also could just be, new materials, new manufacturing processes. They're all being sought because they all help fix the problem. Let's do next slide. So the mission at the Defense Hard Tech Accelerator, it's to commercialize dual purpose technologies. So that's one reason we're presenting, to you folks here today. I know the automotive is definitely commercial, but there's a lot of synergies. What can be developed for the auto sector could also be applied to military and back and forth. So the goal here is to foster those technologies, get them mature, help companies, do the called it mid-later stage development activities in terms of refining designs and prototyping and demonstrating these technologies to help get customers more excited, get more funding, and with more funding, you can get closer and closer to production. And a big part of this is addressing the supply chain gaps and concerns with the new technology landscape of electric vehicles. Let's do the next slide. So a few slides here. I'll talk about the problem, but it's a fact that there's a shrinking supply base for the defense industry. You can see here it's been over 40% reduction just in a decade, and there's concern of losing another 15,000 suppliers over the next decade. And there are a lot of reasons for that. I'll just cover a few just to kind of highlight for now, but one is volatile manufacturing demand cycles. So to be a manufacturer, it's pretty expensive, right? There's a lot of investment. You need the floor space, you need the equipment, you need the workforce and to train them, and have you got to have the overhead in place, quality department and the engineers. So it's pretty normal challenge in defense for volumes to drastically go up and down. And it's part of the defense business with the uncertainty of the budgets, how much is going to be funded every single year, and there's always continuing resolutions. So there's just a constant uncertainty about what the funding future is going to be like. And there's a minimum sustainment rate for a company that they're willing to put up with, I guess I would say, in order to keep their operations available to the government for future orders. And that can turn some people away, and actually it forces some companies just out of business. Consolidation's another reason. Over time, because of these challenges, right? It's hard to be small and be in defense. So a lot of companies, there's a lot of buyouts and things like that. And so at the end of the day, a lot of the companies are getting larger and larger too, even though the total number of companies is coming down. And there's been a depletion of U.S.-based critical manufacturers. A couple that I personally can highlight are castings and forging providers. As with the globalization of the world that we've seen over the last 20 years, there's just a lot of products that, in terms of manufacturing, have moved out of the country, and castings and forgings is one of those. A lot we didn't have a whole lot of to select from in terms, especially castings. Steel castings is a really big example. So as we become more global, non-U.S. companies have picked up a lot of lower level supply chain activities, and then you run into problems with regulations where you can only buy from what they call DFAR friendly countries. So we don't have the full freedom of the world to go buy products in defense as when you're a defense contractor. So it makes it very difficult for the primes and the DoD in general. So next slide. Yeah, so one challenge in the DoD is the success with getting companies to transition from R&D funding to getting into production. Usually it's, if we're talking vehicles here, it's on a platform. Typically, the R&D does a really good job of funding. There's a mechanism for small businesses. There's a small business innovative research program, for example, that only small businesses can submit ideas for technology and get approved. You get like 150,000, I think, for a phase 1 for 6 months. And then you usually got to wait about a year before you get a phase 2 and that's where the real money starts kicking in. It's $1 million. And there's mechanisms that go beyond that. But really, once you get to that point, the government doesn't really help you get farther. You really gotta, as a small business, you gotta be a pioneer and really push yourself to connect the dots, find out who's who are the decision makers. That's really hard. It's really hard to find an entrepreneur that is really good and inventive at technology, but can also make the connections and use non-technical skills, a lot of business skills, networking skills, and business strategy to take it to the next level. So typically what's to happen is the companies, they need to engage other parts of the government, the actual buying command that would buy the vehicles with their technology on it. And then with the primes, typically every vehicle platform has a prime contractor that's the main one. And you'd have to work that. And then sometimes you have to go 2 or 3 levels deep in their supply chain. So it can get really, really complicated. But that's just to kind of highlight that. So with the Defense Hard Tech Accelerator, we're looking to help provide additional funding, but also help these early stage companies make those connections so they can position themselves to get on a platform and get out of the continuous R&D cycle. Next slide. Okay. So here, as many of you know, there's a concern or a problem But China is leading the U.S. in a lot of areas of new vehicle technologies in the areas of electrification. Battery manufacturing is a big one. Just their big push on clean energy processing and mining of rare earth metals. We can do it too, but we've gone away from that because there's a lot of environmental problems with that. So technologies that help with that, whether it's development of new materials or helping find cleaner energy ways to extract these rare earth materials from our own country. And semiconductor fabrication is very, very focused over in Asia, and that's something that has been recognized and it's being worked on, especially when it comes to chip manufacturing. Let's do next slide, please. So our focus, we're looking to address critical supply chain gaps. And there's a whole host of areas here. Most of it is in the area of energy storage and batteries. That's a primary focus, but also anything to do with power electronics, power generation, advanced materials, like I mentioned. If we can help alleviate supply chain problems and develop our own materials over here, that would be better. Electric motors. And then one thing I want to mention too, on the DoD platforms, there's been a push for electric vehicles for a long time. You can go back to the Crusader program in the 90s. They were going to do an artillery program. And a lot of technologies from that kind of evolved over to where the Army is today, honestly. But one thing, I think until we fix the supply chain concerns, it's going to be really, really difficult for a platform to get past what's called a milestone C, which is the government's approval to enter full rate production. Because last thing defense wants to do is field a bunch of electric powered vehicles and then rely on our adversary, somewhere down the road for some sort of material supply. So that's how big this problem is. I mean, we could have the best design in the world, the best vehicle design in the world, but if we can't sustain it and keep them running anywhere around the world, that could be a hindrance to fielding these vehicles. Next chart. So I mentioned, focus areas, electrification. Just highlight some more examples. A lot of focus on the battery side. That's ultra critical, and I'm very excited to, help out our country on these items, and with a little bit of really like to get some more manufacturing jobs in Michigan. I've been born and raised here, been here my whole life. But again, a lot of electronic type items that are basically a core to electric vehicle architectures and things. It is our focus, and the focus is the hardware. Next slide. Along with that, really it's electrification systems for mobility, right? So like I mentioned, we're also looking to support drones. I mean, most drones are made in China today. So we need to have our own capability to counter the drone threat when it comes to defense systems. And so we're keeping our eyes open and looking for opportunities for companies that can help on the drone side of things as well. And next slide, I think that's probably it. Oh, yeah, objectives. So focus here is to identify companies that really are at a TRL level 5. So TRL for non-defense folks, technical readiness level. The DoD has a scale from 1 to 9, 1 being an idea and a piece of paper, and 9 to being fully ready for full rate production. So we want to start with companies that are about halfway, that at least have a good design, ideally some sort of limited, proof of concept demonstration with some sort of hardware, but not really required, but at least, have a defensible design that is ready for prototyping and building, because that's where the money really starts to being needed. We want to commercialize, over 100 hard technologies, over the next 6 years that address supply chain gaps in like raw material or any kind of material supply, and national security concerns, which is that's why we have a defense industry. So anyways, I think that's about it. Next slide. So just want to again thank you, Sarah and Stephanie, for allowing me the time here, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chad. That was great. So what I'm hearing is it's complicated.
Yeah. True.
And I'm with you. I think that everyone on this call is probably invested in making sure these jobs and this industries continue in Michigan and growing that new technology. So thank you for the work that you're doing at the accelerator. It's definitely needed, and we are a powerhouse in both automotive and defense, and that ecosystem is just amazing in the state. I think it's something that's sometimes undervalued. So very excited that you're doing this work. So I want to move on to our next speaker, Elizabeth Melville with SAE. Elizabeth is as a director of learning. Elizabeth is responsible for leading SAE's professional development programs as well as its certification strategy and efforts. Elizabeth works closely with SAE's Sustainable Mobility Solutions team and the projects that help build green tech workforce. Elizabeth has spent over 2 decades building highly talented learning teams and developing training programs in all modalities. Most recently, Elizabeth has led the development of a body of knowledge resulting in the launch of the SAE electric vehicle supply equipment EVSE Technician Certification Program, which certifies the critical workforce needed to maintain and repair electric vehicle charging stations. Elizabeth is passionate about lifelong learning and sustainability. So from the hard defense into the automotive and where these two meet. So excited to hear about what Elizabeth has to talk about today, and workforce, which is always the topic du jour in Michigan. We can't do any of these things without having this workforce element. So I will turn it over to Elizabeth to talk about some workforce.
Great, thanks so much, Sarah. It's really a pleasure to be here as a member of MAGMA and getting to share a little bit about SAE and SAE ITC's government technologies work on this project. We're, of course, engaged in the workforce pillar, and this work is actually shared between SAE ITC Government Technologies and SAE. We're an affiliate, and I'll explain that in a moment, and MXD Learn, and you're going to hear from MXD in just a couple of minutes. So, as Sarah shared, I've been in training for a little over 2 decades, and I've been in the mobility technology technical training space for about 5 years. And it's interesting that, one of the first experiences I had, we went out to a CEO founder's office to have a conversation about the work that their organization was doing in the connected and automated space. And, it was a very successful venture, was growing really quickly. And when asked, what problems were keeping him up at night, he said, hands down, no question about it, it was workforce. And workforce, when you think about all the different problems that a founder has to deal with, with funding and marketing and sales and getting product out, it all came down to talent, being able to recruit, hire, and retain people who had the knowledge and skill and experience to be able to come in and do the work. So we hear this over and over again, especially in the electrification and battery manufacturing space, that workforce is just a critical enabler and is going to be absolutely essential to address. Hence, of course, this grant program has invested in this particular area. So next slide, please. I'd like to share just a little bit about SAE and ITC. So this project is a joint effort between our two organizations, and we're affiliates within the SAE family. Our teams work together to support government initiatives, DoD initiatives in particular, and those driven, by the need for focusing on workforce. So I'd like to give just a brief introduction of SAE International. I know a lot of you know who we are. We started a little over 120 years ago by a gentleman named Henry Ford and a few others as the Society of Automotive Engineers. And since that time, we've grown to support a variety of industries in the automotive space, very prominent there in Michigan, as well as aerospace engineering community with a wide variety of services. And I want to share this slide in particular because most people know us from our standards, but you don't necessarily know about all of the other things that we do. So the consensus-based standard work that we do is derived from committees. Probably many of you or your colleagues sit on those committees. They're volunteers that work together in a non-competitive fashion to ensure that those best practices are created to build safety, efficiency, effective engineering solutions, and sustainability into mobility. But we also have a wide variety of other activities that are focused on things like information products and services and publishing, education, networking, convening experts in areas that are related to standards and also unrelated to standards. So we offer a digital platform called Mobilis, which you may subscribe to. This contains thousands of resources, including tech papers, research reports, journals, books. So a wide variety of resources that people use on a daily basis to maintain their knowledge and to grow their knowledge. We have over 44,000 standards to date, including most recently the NACS supercharging standard for electric vehicles. That's J3400. So we're very focused on continuing to grow with the needs that industry has in connected, automated, and electrified space. We have professional development, of which I lead the team in that, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment. But we include training, certifications, engineering events. We run to bring professionals together to prepare and deliver papers and convene experts to network. We also have a K-12 STEM curriculum focused on mobility. It's called A World in Motion. That's adopted by thousands of students across the country. And moving all up into the university programs, we have the Collegiate Design Series competitions, which engage teams of engineers, young people across the world in hands-on mobility challenges. Students get incredibly excited about this. Usually at our events, we have student teams come out and present, and it's just a really great way to build their skills in real-world projects. And we have a media group as well that publishes journals and online newspapers and a foundation. So our activities are really wide-ranging. I call it the 360-degree talent ecosystem because you can come in as a student in kindergarten, and you can continue and engage with SAE throughout your entire career. So it's a pretty unique platform, I think, for technical professionals to be able to engage in lifelong learning. ITC has also a unique value proposition, and that it convenes organizations to collaborate in a neutral forum to drive innovative solutions to key industry challenges. We enable new and existing consortia to successfully impact the industry through widespread adoption of solutions. So our organizations work very closely together. Next slide, please. So our mission at SAE is very simple. It's to advance mobility, knowledge, and solutions for the benefit of humanity. We're a nonprofit. We do this work by convening experts in all of the areas that we serve in a neutral environment. These are our stakeholders. You are our stakeholders. Our reach is really substantial in terms of the numbers and people engaged in the activities that I just described. Our expertise comes from over 200,000 engineers and experts who use SAE and SAE ITC to convene and to network, to publish, and to meet the challenges before us. Most acutely now before us is the need to engage in goals towards a net zero emission and the reshoring of manufacturing to support industry and defense. And so related to this, SAE runs 27 battery committees to date and a variety of other related workforce development and curriculum projects. So as Sarah mentioned earlier, we have an electric vehicle supply equipment, charging maintenance and repair certification program. And we pulled that together with experts from the field. And it's very similar to what we're going to do here on this project. And I'll explain how we did that in just a minute. We're engaged in the UX Charge Experience Consortium. So lots of work really focusing on sustainability, electrification, and battery manufacturing. Next slide, please. So as energy storage and battery supply chain capabilities ramp up, a capable and well-trained workforce is critical to meeting these ambitious goals that we all have to move to electrification. And you know, this has been really well documented by the LiBridge program. Many of you will be familiar with the report that they published last year, which recommended a series of actions to address the deficiency in lithium battery technology development and infrastructure. And you'll see here, this is a graph that is reproduced just to kind of emphasize the investment in workforce development that is needed and that this project is seeking to address. So LiBridge estimates that the workforce in battery manufacturing needs to grow by a factor of 4x in just the next 6 years to meet a goal that they established to capture 60% of the economic value consumed by US domestic demand. So it's just here in the US. As most of you and many of you know, most battery manufacturing today occurs offshore, most of it in China. And so, of course, a resilient supply chain is engaged in reshoring this work here. So a greater number of workers are needed here and even greater to meet the adjacent needs of the industry. So that would include things like maintenance and repair, first response, charging infrastructure, and other related areas. At this point, since the Inflation Reduction Act, over $40 billion has been invested in new battery manufacturing facilities in the US. So this is significant. And when you consider the number of workers that are needed to support that investment, just a couple of facts here for you. So an average of 2,500 people are employed in a battery factory. And this means that over 100,000 jobs are going to be needed to be filled in the U.S. by 2030. So it's a huge opportunity, certainly, and this is exciting. It's really reshaping the labor market in real time. As these facilities ramp up, there is a need for well-trained, capable, skilled workforce to come in and help these businesses thrive. So when you consider the needs of the defense supply chain, this is a critical need to build the resiliency that's needed for our defense capabilities, and to support the shift to electrification within defense. Okay, next slide, please. So I want to just talk a little bit about the workforce development pillar that SAE is engaged with here. And our remit is really threefold. The first is to develop a set of industry-informed best practices that will support the roles and responsibilities in the battery manufacturing supply chain. The second is to derive associated training and curriculum that will be supporting those best practices that we work with industry to develop. And the third is to create an industry adopted program that will certify the workforce for key roles. So those are the three areas. So how we're going to go about doing this is similar to how we worked on the EVSE program, and it's also similar to the way that we assemble our standards committees. We work directly with industry experts who are stakeholders in the work. We're in the process of putting together an advisory panel who will work together to review the needs of their industry. This is what we did with EVSE. So pull together the folks who are employers and who are actually filling the roles to identify those best practices and to come to consensus on a stable set of recommended practices that can then be associated with standards. So we take into account the roles that are, we will take into account the roles that will be defined by the Department of Energy, and that is under the work of the Bettany Jones's team. So as soon as that body of work is released, we'll be pulling that into our work. We'll be working with members of other organizations such as LiBridge, as well as coordinating with our experts who are involved in our battery committees. And we'll also be coordinating with MXD and the work that they're doing in putting together their hiring guide and the role definitions that they're working on that you'll hear from Angela speak about in a couple of minutes. So where do we start with this work? Next slide, please. So we're not starting in Korea. But I brought this in because I want us to consider some of the challenges that this workforce faces. So what you're seeing here is an image from a battery materials plant fire that occurred in Korea in 2022. Unfortunately, one person lost their life in this fire and 3 people were injured. Next slide, please. Closer to home, in California, was the Tesla Megapack factory that occurred in California. That's what you're seeing on this slide. And this fire burned for over 19 hours before it was extinguished. It shut down California's Highway 1. So if you've ever driven out there, Highway 1 it's a big deal to shut it down. There was a 12-hour-long shelter-in-place advisory for residents. They had to shut all the windows, turn off their ventilation systems due to the hazardous material that was emitted by lithium-ion battery fires. So it's pretty significant when a Tesla factory catches fire. Next slide, please. And just a few more reminders of the challenges that exist in battery manufacturing plants. And it's a reminder that we have a need for comprehensive standards that define best practices in safety, so that the workforce is well trained and understands best practices. So common causes of battery management system failure include things like cell imbalance, overcharging, undercharging, temperature-related issues, thermal runaway, communication errors. There's a whole wide variety of things that contribute to risk, and risk involved with catastrophic incidents, such as the ones that I've shown here. So these occur at different stages throughout the battery life cycle. In manufacturing environments that contain the potential for these catastrophic incidents, these include severe injury, death. The impacts on nearby community include toxic emissions, toxic air pollution. And besides just the risk to humans, which is the most important risk of all, the lack of standards across industry that increase risks for the supply chain. OEMs, the DoD, all of whom can leave weeks, months, years can lose on production when these events occur. So getting in front of that is something that is absolutely critical. Many of these accidents are avoidable. So I want to just, I'm framing this up because this, as we've spoken to the experts that we've been working with, this is low-hanging fruit that we want to address as part of this project. Next slide, please. So because this is a new and growing industry, the maturity in manufacturing workforce in battery manufacturing specifically, we're in growth mode, but of course it's a challenge. So you just see a snippet of roles here that we'll be focusing on. Again, we'll be looking at what Bethany Jones' team puts together to inform, where we really want to focus most. But we really need workers who are well-versed, trained, and skilled in comprehensive, consistent safety practices so that we can avoid accidents. And safety practices are not yet standardized across the industry. So these are really acute and potent, very potent areas for us to consider so that we can avoid these accidents. So the advisory panel that we're putting together will initially focus on identifying needed safety protocols and gaps. We'll look at what are the gaps in consistent practices across industry. This happens through a series of meetings that occur on a biweekly basis where we put together an initial set of best practices and then walk through them one by one and ensure that there is agreement and there are lots of consistency that we can build into this program. So the panel will identify the best practices that can be standardized across the industry and support the defense manufacturing industrial ecosystem. Next slide, please. So once the panel coalesces around establishing the recommendations, these will be sent on to and reviewed by the SAE International Battery Safety Chair, that's Brian Engel today, who will share with the appropriate committees to look at adopting into SAE standards. We feel that this is an effective way to really get consensus around what should be set into place and adopted by industry. Concurrently, we'll develop training materials that help organizations implement those standards. When the standards become fully adopted, we'll adjust the materials to make sure that they're fully in line. These materials will be made available to training providers and employers as part of this grant. And following a train the trainer model, SAE will also offer trainings to the supply chain on implementing the curriculum. And finally, the panel will also focus on certifying knowledge and skills for specific roles. So this work is a little bit, farther out. This may focus on safety practices to ensure that that if there are no other certification programs or OSHA regulations in place, this will allow us to build that into the certification program. So our progress to date, our work has begun with discovery sessions with a number of experts in the field. I mentioned Brian Engel, who's works with us very closely, Bob Gallion, who was the CTO at CATL and worked on the curriculum that was spun up there. We've worked with both of them. We've been mapping the needs in the battery manufacturing space. And this is, again, as I said, led us to really focus on aspects of safety as there was consensus that, this is just number one, and it really has to be a central focus. So as we are, so we've begun that work. We're also currently assembling our advisory panel and working with that team. And we're expected to kick off in early April. I believe we still have 1 or 2 slots remaining on the panel. So if you have someone in mind, please reach out to me. I'll put my contact information in the chat, or you can reach out to Stephanie to get in touch. But this, but the work is going to begin soon with the advisory panel. So it does usually take quite a bit of time to ensure that there are thorough discussions around what's needed, but we do understand that this is very acute. So our goal is to at least get a first set of curricula out the door here this year. So with that, that's all I have. I'm pass it over back to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much. That was great. There's so much, there's so many ramifications of this electrification process that we're looking at, and safety is absolutely one of them. We want to make sure that, all of our engineers and our first responders and everyone is safe when we're looking at what this new frontier looks like. So thank you for having that foresight to look at those safety standards from that perspective. So we are going to move on now to Angela. Angela Acruso is the Director of Workforce Programs, which she serves as after joining MXD in March of 2022. Angela leads the execution of MXD Learns workforce portfolio to drive success and impact in preparing current and future workers for careers in manufacturing. She comes to MXD with extensive experience in program management and grant administration. Previously, Angela has spent 5 years at YMCA Metropolitan Chicago, where she implemented enterprise-wide projects and initiatives, which included managing the organization's census, 2020 outreach and engagement program funded by the Illinois Department of Human Services. She is a certified diversity, equity, and inclusion training facilitator. I love that. and has a passion for creating healthy workplaces. She received her BA in politics from Drake University and a Master of Public Administration from the University of Illinois in Chicago. When she's not working, Angela likes to travel, ride her bike, test out her skills as an aspiring chef for her friends and family. So I can't wait to meet Angela in person, and maybe she can cook for me sometime.
Send any requests, Sarah.
Fabulous. And Angela is with the Digital Manufacturing and Cybersecurity Institute, which is the long version of MXD. So cybersecurity is my background, so very excited about having that cyber focus as well. So I will hand it over to Angela to talk about her role in this project.
Thanks so much, Sarah, and good morning, everybody. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Angela Curso, the Director of Workforce Programs at MXD. A little background on MXD before I get into how we're supporting the Michigan Defense Resiliency Consortium. And MXD stands for Manufacturing Times Digital, and we are the Digital Manufacturing and Cybersecurity Institute funded by the Department of Defense. We are a Manufacturing Innovation Institute, which is, for those of you who are not familiar, spurred out of the Obama administration, recognizing that many American manufacturing jobs had gone overseas as a result of the Great Recession, and in an effort to try to reshore American manufacturing jobs and create competitive American manufacturing, led some investments from the federal government to launch what is now 17 total manufacturing innovation institutes, 9 sponsored by the Department of Defense, like MXD, and the remaining sponsored by the Department of Energy and the Department of Commerce. Each MII, or Manufacturing Innovation Institute, has a specific technology focus area. Some are robotics, semiconductors, biomanufacturing, but as Sarah mentioned, MXD's is focused on digital manufacturing and cybersecurity. Digital manufacturing using technology to run better, faster, smarter, and knowing that when we're asking manufacturers to get on the grid using technology, we're also opening them up to cybersecurity threats. So we added that dual focus mission in 2019. The Institute as a whole, we're located in Chicago, Illinois, just about 10 minutes north of downtown, so not too far from Michigan. And for where we focus on as an institute, we encourage technology adoption, making sure that stakeholders within manufacturing have the resources, playbooks needed to actually adopt technologies and implement them within their organizations. We also convene stakeholders. We have a 300-member network, all the way from government stakeholders to small to medium-sized manufacturers, solution providers, community-based organizations, academics, you name it, and bring them all together to solve what is manufacturing's greatest problems right now. So bringing together stakeholders in a non-competitive environment for them to be able to combine resources along with our resources to be able to find those solutions and then implement them. And then finally, as I'm considered, the empowering the workforce. And we all know the statistics, about 500,000 open manufacturing jobs right now, projected 2 million open manufacturing jobs by the end of the decade, mainly due to a skills gap, but also due to a diminishing talent pipeline, as well as the influx of retirees as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. We can actually move to the next slide as I begin to introduce our workforce programming. And Elizabeth did a really great job talking about the general workforce landscape and the importance of beefing up the workforce, especially in EV manufacturing and emerging technology areas. But MXD Learn, which is the workforce development arm of MXD, our job is to upskill, train the current and future workers within digital manufacturing and cybersecurity. We've trained about 250,000 learners to date, and we have a goal of training 1 million workers by the end of the decade. We do this and we have 3 main pillars that really drive our work. The first is being led by industry. And we know that when we're talking about putting folks into jobs, that we make sure that employers are with us every step of the way. So we engage industry through our Learn Advisory Committee. They have review capabilities on many of the intellectual property pieces that we put out, but we also engage in workforce needs surveys and make sure that our members and those within industry are actually driving our programming. And the next piece is it's driven by community. We know that good programs don't exist in silos, so we need to make sure that all the stakeholders within a community are at the table when we're developing and implementing programming. As an example, we have some K through 12 programming to get individuals excited about potential careers in manufacturing. And we don't just partner with students, we partner with parents, faith-based organizations, administrators, and other community-based organizations that may help us move the program along and drive impact and success. And finally, excuse me, we focus on the underengaged. When we talk about numbers like 2 million workers, worker shortage, it's really not going to be enough to tap into the talent pipelines that are frankly pretty tapped out. And so we need to rethink what we think is a potential worker in manufacturing looks like and tap into different talent pipelines. You may be underengaged based on your race, your gender, where you are located geographically, disability status, et cetera. So we have programming that's really geared toward boosting the talent pipeline and helping manufacturers think through how they actually tap into talent that is there waiting and ready for careers in manufacturing. And we do this with partners across industry, academia, government, you name it. And we can go to the next slide, please. This is really a snapshot of all the work that we do. We have an approach that we call define, develop, do. In the define stage, and really as the basis for the work that we're doing with Michigan, is we identified the future of work in manufacturing. And we've done this through 2 hiring guides developed in 2017 and 2020 respectively. And these hiring guides are free, publicly available on our website to download, and they outline a combined 400 roles, talent snapshots, personas, job descriptions, and career pathways for what we think are the future of work in manufacturing, the jobs that we think are going to be tied to the boosting technology areas that are emerging 1, 3, 5 years from now. Within those hiring guides, we have developed talent maps, career pathways, and then basing our training programs off of that, we've developed curriculum that tied directly back to those competency maps, skills, and career pathways. And we've, in the develop stage, that actually provides the foundation for what we're mapping to. We have a number of different programs ranging from engaging K through 12 students, as I mentioned, all the way up to upskilling the current manufacturing workforce, and others that are focused on boosting the talent pipeline. We have programming focused on engaging individuals with disabilities for careers in manufacturing as well. One I'll highlight here is that our Cybersecurity for Manufacturing Operational Technology program developed directly based on a role in our cybersecurity hiring guide and developed with University of Maryland, Baltimore County, that trains manufacturers on cybersecurity for actually the operational technology pieces, you know, as it states, but manufacturers we found felt that cybersecurity was really for the IT department, not for operators, not for folks on the factory floor. And so this curriculum was designed to flip that way of thinking and help individuals protect those actual operational assets. And then just highlighting, we've been on a number of defense manufacturing community support program, and we're very excited to have begun work on and supporting this one in Michigan as well. So it is not our first rodeo with DMCSP, and find these programs to be incredibly impactful and have for years to come, truly. And then we provide hands-on programming. We do workshops, whether that's focused on accessibility in the workplace or focusing on protecting water within our supply chain. We do many in-person workshops and actually just trained about 800 students directly on our factory floor in just the past few months. And then MXD Learn Virtual Training Center platform is our Open edX platform. It's our learning management system that's designed to allow individuals all across the country to be able to take our courses that we have developed with industry and academia. And we can go to the next slide. And as our work here in Michigan is concerned, as I said, Elizabeth did a great job laying the foundation for the need and desire for workforce development within Michigan EV. But as we're concerned, our first deliverable in supporting MDRC is developing an EV hiring guide, similar to the format of our hiring guides in the past, just a little bit on a smaller scale. We're anticipating developing about a 50-page document that outlines around It goes pretty deep into about 10 roles, but we'll probably outline about 50 adjacent roles that we think are going to be key for having success within the EV supply chain, energy storage, battery, you name it. And it's going to outline skills, competencies, but also go deep into personas. Where do you find talent? Where do you find talent, and how do you make sure that they go along a career path within manufacturing so they're not stuck in one job in particular, but actually can take their hiring, their skills and knowledge throughout the process and career within manufacturing as well. It'd be pretty similar to the format within our previous hiring guides, which we have developed with Manpower Group. Those may be familiar. They're a very large talent agency and employment agency that send about 600,000 people to work every day, but they have a very large consulting arm that has provided the foundation for much of our work in the past 8 years at the Institute. Work has begun with Manpower on that, really understanding the general landscape. And as Elizabeth also mentioned, we will be making sure that we're aligned to the work of SAE, because when we're thinking about key roles and skills within EV manufacturing, the standards piece and safety is also going to be key as well. Imagine we'll focus some on cybersecurity considerations within EV as well. Second, for our deliverable number 2 is developing a community equity plan. When we talk about engaging the underengaged, and also filling what we know are thousands of open jobs within manufacturing, we need to make sure that those who have not had a chance to be part of the manufacturing workforce or manufacturing economy actually are brought along for that success and development as well. So we plan on developing a community equity plan, which is going to acknowledge the community considerations, particularly for marginalized communities, as we transition to EV manufacturing. And so we are currently looking for a vendor local to Michigan to be able to support us in that work as we think through how we can develop the workforce equitably. I know mine was pretty quick, and that's all I had today, but open to any questions as we move to the Q&A. And I'll drop my contact information in the chat as well.
So we actually do have one, Angela, in the Q&A, and they wanted to know about programs for some of our population in the 56-year-old range. So workers that have that extensive, highly, experience in that manufacturing work environment, but now find themselves out of the workforce. So is there any considerations in your plan for that type of worker?
Absolutely. And I think that's so much of what manufacturers are experiencing right now, especially at the wave of retirement, recognizing that so much of the institutional knowledge that veteran workers had, and not being able to train new workers with that institutional knowledge has really created a large gap within their workforce. And so recognizing that in the 50 to 60-year-old range, that institutional knowledge and allowing them the opportunity to upskill is absolutely going to be considered. And it's how we think about our career pathways too, not just an individual who's been working in manufacturing for 5 years, but how you account for somebody who's been working in manufacturing for 20, 30 years as well, and the kinds of skills that they'll need to be able to really upskill and generate as part of this as well. So absolutely, that's something that we're thinking about.
Well, that's fantastic. As someone in that age range, I definitely appreciate when that's being considered. So we are going to move to the moderated questions. So I'm going to be your moderator today, the hostess with the mostest, hopefully. And we will have all of our presenters come on screen. And if you have any questions, if you want to put them in the chat, I'm going to try to moderate the chat. And then I have some questions as well that I have for the group. So we will be doing questions and answers. So I think I have a question that could probably go to everyone, but I will address it to Stephanie and one to Stephanie and Chad, because I think it's a fairly similar questions, which is, what are the challenges that you anticipate for companies currently in the commercial sector that want to move to the defense sector? So we talked a lot about the automotive and commercial sector, and then how they would transition over to defense. And so I'd love to hear your perspective. I'll have Stephanie maybe go first and then transition over to Chad on what that looks like and what you foresee those challenges to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw a few comments about this in the chat. One of the biggest challenges I think that SMMs that are currently in the commercial industry want to move into the Department of Defense is going to be the cybersecurity requirements. So there's been a lot of talk about the cybersecurity maturity model certification that defense companies will need to achieve. The moment looks like that's going to be in place by the summer of 2025. But depending on the type of information that your company might be working with will depend on the level that of cybersecurity that you need to put in place. And it takes time. So the core of that is NIST 800-171. There's 110 controls. It's not something that you can just put in place overnight. So that will be something that companies need to work towards getting that in place. Now, I should say that whether you're going into defense or not, you should have cybersecurity controls in place because those nefarious actors out there are getting better and better at digging into our businesses and trying to thwart our activities. With that being said, there are resources out there. There is a CyberSmart program for defense companies that are in there, and then companies in this space, we can support them with our funding in assisting them in moving forward in that area. So that's one big area that I think is going to be a challenge.
Yeah, we've actually heard that, Stephanie, for a long time, that the cybersecurity is obviously going to be the challenge. And I know that from my perspective and my role, that a lot of times they would say, well, we'll just stay in automotive, or we'll just continue in the other manufacturing space. But I mean, cybersecurity is going to be an issue whether they're flowing down the requirements or not. The automotives are going to want to minimize their risk within the supply chain as well. So those standards are coming. They keep pushing them back a little bit, but they will be enacted eventually. So giving the companies time to recognize that. And so, Chad, the same question for you. You know, what do you see as some of the hurdles?
Well, there are a lot of hurdles, obviously, but I'm going to answer this in two forms, depending on what kind of commercial company you are. But I'm going to start off with, if you're a contract manufacturer and you're not providing IP in terms of your product, there's a really good mechanism, and it's how Lock Performance started. There's a lot of manufacturers in Michigan, contract manufacturers in Michigan, that got started in defense by just being a contract manufacturer. So the Defense Logistics Agency, which is the arm of the Army that sustains these vehicles, well, they have the money to buy spares and replacement parts. And the government owns 100% of the TDP in a lot of these cases on these feel-good platforms. So they'll go out. There's a sam.gov website where these solicitations come out. And so if you're a contract manufacturer in the automotive industry, I certainly can help you, get started in that area. But basically, it could be, $10,000, $20,000 contracts all the way up to millions and millions of dollars. So it's a great way to be able to get some defense revenue without having to work your IP into some platform. The second category I'll cover are, let's say you have an established commercial business in automotive. I'm assuming you're at some point where you might not need seed money for R&D. Maybe you do. Either way, you're going to want to market your technology to the R&D arm of the Army. So you're still going to want to have a relationship with the folks that provide funding for R&D. If nothing else, to educate them and get their support on the viability of your product compared to your competition. And then the next thing would be to educate the buying command, the PEO office in charge of the platform that actually funds the prime contractor. Got to be a little bit careful here, because sometimes the primes don't like you talking to their customer, but it's just educating them on your product. Because at the end of the day, the primes typically make the final decision. They have to defend it to the government. So then you also have to find out who the prime contractor is that you're targeting. And you may have to find out a major supplier to them that you need to talk to, because depending on what you're offering, you might be 3 or 4 levels down the food chain, like I mentioned before. And that sometimes the government will have specs, just like I mentioned. There's a new battery spec out there. So if you're a battery company in automotive, it's a matter of learning what the spec is and deciding, if you want to go after it. I heard it's about $1 million and just testing alone to verify your battery, to get your name on a drawing, so that when a prime gets the job and they got a drawing, they got to go execute to build a vehicle. Now they have to pick you or maybe someone else who's an approved vendor. So it's not easy, but one thing, I got to say, when it comes to the defense industry, for outsiders looking in, it can be daunting. But if you're in the game and you've passed those hurdles, the flip side is there's not as much competition. All these hurdles keep competition out. So once you establish yourself, you could dominate an entire market for vehicles. Goodyear started making track back in World War II in Ohio, St. Mary's, Ohio. And that plant has been providing track to this day. It's changed ownerships. It went from Goodyear to Advanced Technologies and now Lock Performance. The end of the day, to make track, you got to go through a qualification process that's timely and expensive. The hard thing is, though, if you're not the incumbent on a mature technology, it's really hard, right? Because now there's an established incumbent who's got, the manufacturing footprint, the process is down. It's really hard to compete with someone like that based on price. But now we're talking about new vehicle technologies and implementing them. The landscape's wide open. So if you got an electric vehicle technology in the automotive space, someone's going to dominate all these vehicles with your technology, whether it's you or someone else.
So there's a lot of opportunity out there for sure.
Yeah.
I do want to bring it over to Elizabeth. So we're talking about certifications and change, and that's not always, something that people look for. So how do you get industry buy-in for the certifications? What is the catalyst for that?
Well, it's a pretty simple, not easy, but simple answer. And it is that industry is writing essentially what becomes the certification. So they're defining what skills and knowledge are needed to fulfill certain roles. What do they need to see out of a certification program? It's really not in SAE or SAE-ITC's interest to kind of, define what that is and set it out there and just kind of let it go. It has to be something that's industry driven, that comes from people who are in those roles where they are hiring, where they're going to look to the certification and say, that's going to solve a problem for me. And that's what's really key, is that if you're trying to hire people, what does that certification give you as a hiring manager? Oh, it lets me know that they have met this level of knowledge or skill around safety, for example, or around, that particular role. It has to have value to them. It's also really important that people who are doing that role are part of the advisory panel. So we're those folks are often a little bit harder to recruit because they're not necessarily have the time to meet, because we meet for 90 minutes every other week. It's, it's a big commitment. That's the other piece, is that an organization who's willing to allow someone to sit on that advisory panel and commit that amount of time has invested a lot already in the development of that program. So they've bought onto the value proposition of the certification scheme itself. So it's, as I said, it's a lot of work to get there, but it's a pretty simple value proposition for them.
And it's so important to have both of those folks at the table, right? The hiring managers that are writing the outward job postings and the people that will be receiving the folks. There's always seems to be such a disconnect there. So it's so fantastic that you're trying to tackle that. And I'm sure it is not going to be easy to fix that simple problem, but the model that you're taking seems to be extremely valuable. So thank you for that. Angela, I'm gonna turn it over to you and see what kinds of roles will the EV hiring guide highlight. So if you could, kind of expand upon that a little bit, that would be wonderful.
Yep, absolutely. And a caveat that we don't know yet because we are engaging with industry to find out what their highest priority needs are as well. And I saw Lori Huber in the chat. I'll call out that the EV Jobs Academy has laid a really great foundation with this work, highlighting some career profiles as well with, electrical engineers, automotive technicians, and mapping those out too. So those are absolutely roles that will be considered as well, and certainly don't want to duplicate that work because it's already really been mapped out very well. And then there's some other pieces that we'll need to consider too, especially as we think about safety and standards, making sure there's competencies in that area. And then, of course, cybersecurity, as we've mentioned a number of different times today. The cybersecurity component really can't be understated and kind of needs to be at the forefront of the conversation as we're thinking about transitioning these technology areas. So all that to say is we will be engaging with industry very heavily, whether that's listening sessions, focus groups, to really understand what the greatest skills and needs and competencies are that they're seeing, not just now, but 1, 3, 5 years down the road. And so there will be opportunities for folks on the call to participate in those as well. And there'll be more to come in the coming months there. In many of our hiring guides, we map out roles that range from technicians and operators all the way up to engineers. So, and digital transformation specialists, all those different things we've mapped out as well. So I imagine there'll probably be a very big mix because this is a technology area that's going to be taking manufacturing by storm, and there may be a number of different considerations that we need to think of.
It sounds like the group in its entirety has kind of that great secret sauce, which is having the conversation and the collaboration. And I know we talk about collaboration all the time, and it's such a great word, but it's so hard to do in real time. So I often call it, we do a little bit of forced collaboration. So we make people a little bit uncomfortable in the process, but in the end, it just is such a better product. So I'm going to go back to Stephanie. Given the alignment with our MDRC's initiatives and Michigan's automotive and electrification efforts, how do you foresee the collaboration between MDRC and the other stakeholders in the state? So if you could kind of expand on that and talk a little bit more about that collaboration and the opportunities for synergies and mutual advancement as we go forward with this.
Yeah, absolutely. There is so much going on in the state of Michigan, whether it's, the push towards electrification, the workforce initiatives. So it's important for us to have, as you say, Sarah, forced collaboration because, everybody has their own initiatives and we don't want to be duplicative. We want to build upon each other and utilize all the resources we have. So, as Angela said, building off of the EV Jobs Academy for what they've already done in that workforce space, and then just expanding out on that. There, with our mapping activity, there is other mapping activity that has been going on across the state. So at EGI, we have been trying to connect with those individuals in order to know, okay, where are you at? We don't want to duplicate what you're doing, and how can we support you, and how can you support us? And be more open to that collaboration as opposed to, nope, this is my project, this is your project, because we really want to utilize all the resources to, make Michigan the epicenter of battery storage, energy storage, battery manufacturing as we move forward in all of these areas. So, with all the different federal funding that's happening, all of the state funding, really trying to learn and connect across the state with organizations and get the word out. This is a great platform to share. Here's what we're doing. What other resources are out there that you're already aware of so that we can connect and hopefully foster that innovation as we move it forward, and primarily reduce duplication of efforts. We don't all want to be working on the same thing. And not.
So I hear a call to action on this call. So I hear a call to action. If you are working in this space or you have programming in this space, please reach out to these folks, because I think a lot of people assume that everyone knows what's going on and everyone lives in their own little space, and they assume that everyone is aware of what's going on. But I think that's a large misconception. I mean, I think there's
Absolutely.
a lot of fantastic activities that.
Uh-oh, we lost her.
We did. I think we lost her.
Huh. Give her a minute to come back in. But she's right. There is a call to action. Even at the University of Michigan, we have lots of different defense programs. And so collaborating across the university to know, what is everybody doing? Let's work together to move things forward. So welcome back, Sarah.
I did broadband for 2 years during the pandemic, and I still can't get my internet to work correctly at my house. It just keeps kicking me out randomly. Sorry about that, folks.
No worries.
But yeah, so we definitely want to make sure that we're maximizing that. And I had just one more question for Chad, and I'm just going to bring it up here. We wanted to talk about you talked a little bit in your presentation about the shrinking supply chain to the DoD. And so if you could expand upon some of the driving forces that you think are resulting in that would be great. Sorry. And I hopefully will stay on for the rest of this, but I can't make any guarantees with this today. Teams has acted a little funny.
Yeah, thank you. I just to mention a few things, and I'll mention a few more, and I guarantee if people listening will come up with 2 or 3 times more. I mean, there's a lot of factors, and that could be an entire day itself. But anyway, I already mentioned there's volatile demand for products in a manufacturing environment and defense, especially when it comes to spares. If you're supporting the spares market, they'll do big buys one year and then nothing for 2 or 3 years. So it can be really challenging. Consolidation, the Pac-Man thing that's been going on in defense for a long time. A lot of these big companies, if you break them down, they comprise of literally sometimes hundreds of companies if you go back 50 years. I mentioned the depletion of a lot of U.S. manufacturers with globalization, which makes it challenging because there's regulations that you can only buy from certain countries. Some other things, let's see, beyond R&D, I already mentioned. So if you're a small business, they do a good job of allowing small businesses, startup businesses to get R&D contracts to start a business, right? But or if you're a contract manufacturer, go to DLA and start making products. But if you're a technology company, it is really hard because, like I mentioned, this battery spec alone, if you're trying to start out as a small business and get into the battery space, now you got to look at $1 million just for validation, and on top of all the engineering and the design and test, other things. So all the regulations you have to jump through. So you're looking at a big time commitment, capital, investments, and patience, really. I mean, if you're going to get into defense with a technology and that's your path, you need to have a lot of patience. I mean, you got to be willing to stick it out sometimes for years to get anything more than an R&D contract. That's where, if you could be diversified and have some other funding streams, I'd highly recommend that. But it's a reason why it's hard for new companies to enter this market. and I already mentioned the tech specifications. It takes a long time. Just an example, I've had the luxury of working at a really small startup before I went to BA Systems. So, ASTI was like 20 people, and we had SBIR contracts, small business and innovative research contracts. And then I went to BA Systems, which is a multi-billion-dollar company, and BAE makes literally like 85% of all the armored combat vehicles today. So that's where I got to learn the ropes in the industry and make a lot of connections. And then I was at Lock Performance, where we're kind of a middle grade company. So I've had the fortunate to have all those experiences. The SBIR program, it's great, but it's slow. So literally 6 months for 100K, and then you quite often have to wait a year or two to get your phase 2 for $1 million. It's not set up that way. I'm just saying that's how it actually operates. Unless you have a really good government on the other side that really knows the system and knows how to accelerate things. So that's just something to keep in mind when you get into the SBIR program. It's great, but you got to be patient. Someone, I think Paul Browser, mentioned about all these requirements, which is spot on. As as time's gone by and the world's gotten smaller and cybercrime's gone up, our adversaries are using the cyber world to get at us. And what's led that is all these requirements surrounding cybersecurity, starting with NIST, which is already mentioned. ITAR has always been a barrier. ITAR is basically, I can't remember the acronym it stands for, but only U.S. people can have access to the information to really make the U.S. products. You can't read drawings, for example, if you're not a U.S. person. So that means your workforce, now you're constrained. You can't hire any of these documented immigrants as easily as you used to. So I may be a little bit wrong about that, because there is some exceptions, but it just makes it difficult. And then there's operational security requirements, and a lot of it is just training and certifying your workforce is trained. So some of these things aren't that big a deal, but they can be quite numerous, and they can add up. And it can scare people away, right? I'm probably scaring some people away, saying how long the SBIR program takes.
I'm usually the gloom and doom in the room with the cybersecurity.
Yeah.
But we have a few minutes left, and there's just a couple more questions I wanted to get to, and I had to switch to my phone, so I look like a different view now. But I wanted to just talk, Angela, about how employers get involved in the process, but I think this is for pretty much everyone. So we can start with Angela, but Elizabeth, you kind of talked about it a bit in your presentation as well, but how do employers, and I'm going to actually expand that, how do employers, but also our community members or people on this call or expertise and who have expertise, get involved in the process? So I'll kick it to you, Angela, and then if anyone else wants to jump in on that as well, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. And we're really excited about the potential of working with community organizations, or really just a larger ecosystem within Michigan. I think first and foremost, as we're trying to identify the highest priority roles, engaging with employers who have direct input into what the skills and competencies they're looking for. And we will be having some listening sessions and focus groups, as I mentioned. So please feel free to attend those once we kind of blast out what the details of those will look like and the opportunities to engage. Absolutely would also love to engage with folks who have already been in this space and laid foundational work, like the EV Jobs Academy. I know you all have put a lot of work into those career profiles that you have developed, and I think that would be very beneficial for us to link up as well. Same as Elizabeth mentioned, that we're closely aligned with SAE because this work is so complementary. So ways for us to continue being involved in that as well.
And if I can just build on what Angela said, and in addition to, how it happens, the value of it is that you actually get a say in the skills that are needed and the knowledge that's needed. You have active participation in defining what that looks like. And from what we've experienced in not only our standards committees, but the other work we've done in these certification programs, just the networking that the individuals that come together and they get so much value from the conversation, they learn a lot from each other. What are you doing? Well, we're doing this. Well, we're doing this. And nobody's giving away any trade secrets, right? Especially you're talking about safety. It's like, how do we come together and agree on what best practices are? That's something that should really not be controversial, but we can really get so much value, and you can get a lot of value you can take back to your organization even before the certification is fully out there. So I think there's tremendous opportunity for employers to come together and be able to contribute to the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just dropped our website in the chat here. So for anybody that's more interested in more information on our consortium, this is just our main webpage. There's drop downs for each of the different pillars and their contact information in there. If you are a company that is in the energy storage and battery manufacturing space that wants to learn more about the funding opportunity, there's more information on this page as well here. So this would be a great resource with all of our contact information in order to find us and reach out so that we can further this conversation.
Yeah, this is Chad. I'll answer as well for the Defense Hard Tech Accelerator. You can contact me directly is one option, cdarraltu.edu, or go to the Centropolis website and make contact there. I've explained our mission, which is, focusing on helping companies transition their technologies and create jobs for Michigan. But I also mentioned about contract manufacturers, just with my experience at Locke and stuff. So if anybody wants to contact me about that, I'm more than happy to help point you in the right direction to look more into it and help you out. We are, like I mentioned, our accelerator just got kicked off. So if you go to the website, there won't be much information there about the defense accelerator just yet. That's in process to get launched. But we are creating a framework, and there'll be more online within the coming couple months. We're going to be at MDEX, which is in Macomb County. That's the Michigan Defense Expedition. It's a conference, and it's a really good one. There's 2 of them a year, and actually we'll be announcing the CRADA that we've signed with the Government R&D Center here at that event. We'll have a booth. You can come meet us. And then in August also, there's GVSAT's Ground Vehicle System Engineering Technology Symposium, which has recently been Novi. I don't know if it still is, but it's definitely Southeast Michigan. And it's really a great forum to get to know what's going on in ground vehicles. Both of them are. But you get to know what's going on in ground vehicles and who's who, and we can meet up.
Thanks, Chad. Yes, both of those will be actually on the National Defense Industrial Association's website. So NDIA, which is an industry association for the defense industry. So they have different programming as well. And that MDEX is a great program that is free to walk the expo floor. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely get engaged in that. And I think we are coming up on time. So I thank everyone for their participation today. Everyone who has joined the webinar, and I will throw it back over to Amanda.
Yes, I was just going to echo that. Thank you so much to everyone that attended today, and thank you so much for a wonderful panel of speakers and moderator. This concludes our MAGMA Advisory Council meeting today. We will be sending out the slides and recording to all attendees. So thank you so much again for joining, and have a great weekend.
Thanks all.
Take care. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.